Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Swap Convention with the second installment of the Magic the Gathering Zendikar Rising unboxing series. This time focusing on the booster bundle. Sadly, as mentioned previously in the commander deck, in the video looking at the commander decks, there will not be a draft booster box unboxing as part of this series because, well, yeah, screw ups on behalf of Amazon. Yeah. Anyway. So, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? So far, the commander decks looked interesting. Managing to utilize all five colors over this course of two decks, and doing so without overlapping colors between decks. So. That's cool. I still miss when they included the set booklet with the bundles. Those are the days, you know. It's a nice way to be able to see what all was in the deck. Neat. What you would need to climb to search the ruins of the Skyclaves. Okay, I'm actually gonna keep that. That's actually a nifty little thing. And here is the artwork on the inside of the bundle sleeve. Nice little panorama shot of Zendikar, or part of Zendikar. That is one of the things I've always liked about Zendikar. It has just a unique look to it. It's not dependent upon things like architecture or anything else. It's about how, the actual land looks. And then we got a green spin down life counter. You can see the placement 20. We've got the Zendikar Rising set symbol. Ooh, excuse me. I'm still not too keen on these bigger spin down counters. Still haven't sold me on them. We got some reminder cards. And got a couple, and let's see. Oh, don't tell me they were lame. Don't tell me they were lame. They brought back the full art land cards for the boosters, but does the bundle come with one of each full art basic land? No, we get these bastardized basic lands like normal. Man, friggin' lame. Got a full set of all 15 basic lands like that. And we've got them both foiled and non-foiled. That's about my opinion on the matter. And as is the case now with the bundle, we have an exclusive variant version of a card. Cherix, the Raging Isle. A 0/17 legendary Leviathan crab for 2 colorless and 2 blue. Spells your opponents cast that target Cherix the Raging Isle cost 2 colorless more to cast. For 3 colorless, Chariot gets plus X minus X until next end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. Okay. Okay, the flavor text is rather amusing. Zendikar's seas are deeper than anyone can fathom. Nice pun. I approve. I do approve. Okay. And before realizing I was going to have the booster bundle or the trap booster box, I did what I normally do. I bought 4 extra loose boosters so I could, open an even amount. But those turned out all right, I guess. Anyway, let's get started. Booster numero uno. Kicking things off, we've got Tazim Royal Mage, a 2/1 Merfolk wizard for 1 colorless and 1 white with a kicker cost of 4. Now the way kicker works is you can pay the kicker cost in addition to the casting cost. In this case, you would spend additional 4 colorless mana, and when the Tazim Royal Mage enters the battlefield, if kicked, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, alright. That's kind of nifty. Next up, we've got Farsight Adept, a 3/3 core wizard for 2 colorless and 1 white. When it enters the battlefield, you and target opponent each draw a card. Okay. Next up, we've got Fissure Wizard, 2/1 Goblin Wizard for 1 colorless and 1 red. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Next up, Reclaim the Waste. It's a sorcery for 1 green with a kicker cost of 3. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your library. If this spell was kicked, search your library for 2 basic land cards instead of 1. Okay, alright. I actually really enjoy those when it's like, something simple. Next up, we've got Oblivion's Hunger, an instant for 1 colorless and 1 black. Target creature you control gains indestructible until end of turn. Draw a card of that creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. Nice. Very nice. Next up, we got Nimana Skydancer, a 2/1 human rogue with flash and flying for 2 colorless and 1 black. When Nimana Skydancer enters the battlefield, target opponent mills 2 cards. Okay. And as a rogue, she'll be excellent for parties. Next up, we have Vanquish the Weak. It's an instant for 2 colorless and 1 black. Destroy target creature with power 3 or less. Makes sense. Have to be a weak creature to vanquish. Next up, we have Risen Riptide. It's a 0/5 elemental for 2 colorless and 1 blue. Whenever you cast a kicked spell, it has base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn. Okay, alright. So if you're all about kicking stuff, well, Risen Riptide makes it rather potent. Next up, we've got Sizzling Barrage. It's an instant for 1 colorless and 1 red. Deals 4 damage to target creature that blocked this turn. Okay. Next up, we have Dauntless Unity. It's an instant for 1 colorless and 1 white. We got a kicker cost on it of 1 colorless and 1 white. So basically double the So to kick it, you'd be doubling the casting cost. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. If kicked, those creatures get +2/+1 until end of turn instead. Okay. Not bad, not bad. Next up we have the Fada Vanguard. A 2/2 human warrior for 1 colorless and 1 red. Warriors are also a necessity for a party, by the way. Whenever it attacks, target creature an opponent controls with power less than or equal to the number of warriors you control can't block this turn. Nice. Okay. Next up, we have the Relic Axe. It's an equipment artifact for 2 mana. It's got an equip cost of 2. When it enters the battlefield, you attach it to target creature you control. The equipped creature gets +1/+1. If it's a warrior, it gets +2/+1 instead. Okay, alright. Next up, we've got Song-Mad Treachery. It's a sorcery for 3 colorless and 2 red. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. On the other side, however, is the Song-Mad Ruins. It's a land. Enters the battlefield tapped. It'll be tapped for 1 red. It looks like you can choose how you want to run it. Next up, we've got Inscription of Abundance. It's an instant for 1 colorless and 1 green with a kicker cost of 2 colorless and 2 green. Choose 1. If kicked, choose any number instead. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. Target player gains X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures they control. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Okay. So if you, for an extra 3 mana, you can do all of those. That's always cool. And we got a forest, and we have a blank card to represent a double-faced card. Basically, to represent a double-faced card. See, and it has a standard back. So you use clear sleeves, but for example, Song-Mad Treachery, Song-Mad Ruins. So yeah, if you use clear sleeves, you can put that in the sleeve so that, you know, people see, oh, it's a card, alright. You see that it's a card. And then you draw it and maybe there's a note on there saying, oh, this is this. So like, ah, okay. Alright, moving on to our next booster. Field Research. It's an instant for 2 colorless and it's a sorcery for 2 colorless and 1 blue with a kicker cost of the same amount. Draw 2 cards. If kicked, draw 3 instead. Okay. Then we got Cliffhaven Sellsword, a 3/1 core warrior for 1 colorless and 1 white. No game text, no abilities, just Kazandu Nectarpod, a 1/3 insect for 1 colorless and 1 green with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, gain 1 life. Okay, alright. We get Ghastly Gloom Hunter, a 1/1 zombie bat for 1 colorless and 1 black with a kicker cost of, I think that's 3 colorless and 1 black. It's flying and lifelink, and if kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Okay, alright. Next up, we have Living Tempest. It's a 3/3 elemental with flash and flying for 4 colorless and 1 blue. And that's it. It's a element. It's flash, it's flying, it's an elemental, it's a 3/3. Easy peasy. Next up, we got Seagate Colossus, a 7/5 Golem Warrior for 7 mana. Costs 1 mana less to cast for each creature in your party. A party consists of up to 1 each of Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, and Wizard. Okay. Next up, we got Disenchant. It's an instant for 1 colorless and 1 white. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Simply put, it's kind of a white standard, you know. I think every year we get at least one new version of it. Next up, we've got Turn Timber Ascetic, a giant cleric, a 5/4 giant cleric for 4 colorless and 1 white. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. Next up, we have a Stonework Pack Beast, 2/1 artifact beast for 2 mana. It is also a cleric, a rogue, a warrior, and a wizard. For 2 mana, you can then add 1 mana of any color. Okay. Next up, we have the Malachor Blood Priest, a 2/1 vampire cleric for 1 colorless and 1 black. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures in your party. Okay. Next up, we have another Fada Vanguard. Then we have a Canyon Jaroba. It's a 1/2 mouse for 2 colorless and 1 white. It's got landfall. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay. Next up, we have the Skyclave Cleric, a 1/3 core cleric for 1 colorless and 1 white. When he enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. Or you can have him pop in as the Skyclave Basilica, which is a land. Enters the battlefield tapped, can be tapped later for white to add 1 white mana. Okay. Next up, we've got Kaza, Royal Chaser, one legendary 1/2 human wizard with flying and haste for 1 blue and 1 red. Tap. The next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn costs X mana less to cast, where X is the number of wizards you control as this ability resolves. Okay. Kind of digging that. We got ourselves a mountain. Oh yeah. There's the full art mountain, by the way. One of the full art mountains. And an insect token. Moving on to our next booster. Put you over here so you stop falling. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. Excuse me. Alright. Kicking things off, we have the Cascade Seer, a 3/3 Merfolk wizard for 3 colorless and 1 blue. When it enters the battlefield, scry X, where X is the number of creatures in your party. Okay. Next up, Expedition Healer, a 2/2 core cleric with vigilance for 1 colorless and 1 white. Life link as long as you control another cleric. Okay. Vigilance is always handy. Especially if you can buff up his stats. Tormenting Voice. So sorcery for 1 colorless and 1 red, and as an additional cost, you must discard a card, but you have to draw 2 cards. So, you know. That one's been around for a while. That's also been one that's been popping back up almost fairly regularly. Next up, we've got the Tajuru Blightblade. A 1/1 elf rogue with Death Touch for 1 green. Not too shabby. Next up, Blood Price. A sorcery for 3 colorless and 1 black. You get to look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order, and then lose 2 life. That's a little, oof. That's a little steep to me, but I mean, there are ways to kind of counteract it, so yeah. Get our Kazandu Nectar Pot. We have a Tuk Rubble Fort. A 0/3 wall with Defender and Reach for 2 colorless and 1 red. Gives creatures you control haste. Always nice to grant haste to your fellow creatures. Next up we have Glacial Grasp. It's an instant for 2 colorless and 1 blue. Tap target creature. Its controller mills 2 cards. That creature is an untapped during the next untap step and draw a card. Okay. Nice. We have a Utility Knife. It's an equipment artifact. For 1 mana, has a 3 mana equipment cost. The effect is that the equipped creature gets +1/+1. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Okay. It automatically gets attached to someone. We have the alternate art for the Skyclave Pickaxe, which is also an equipment artifact, but it has a cost of 1 green. And an equip cost of 2 colorless and 1 green. When it enters the battlefield, attached to a target creature you control. Also has landfall. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Okay, alright. Next up we have the Windrider Wizard. A 2/2 human wizard with flying for 2 colorless and 1 blue. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery or wizard spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. We have another Marasa Root Grazer, which I think we looked at in the last video, actually. Right? Yeah. So let's take another look. It's a 2/3 beast with vigilance for 1 green and 1 white. It can be tapped to do one of the following. You can tap into one of the following 2 things: put a basic land card from your hand onto the battlefield, or return target basic land you control to its owner's hand. Okay. Next up, we've got the our rare is the Crag Crown Pathway. It's a land. You tap for 1 red. Simple enough. But what's this? Land, tap, add 1 green. Because there's another card. The Timber Crown Pathway. Tap, add 1 green. Okay, alright. There are a few like this, so yeah. Then we got a foil as well. Expedition Champion. A 2/3 human warrior for 2 colorless and 1 red. Gets +2/+0 as long as you control another warrior. Alright. We got a Swamp. And another blank card. Which brings us to our next booster. Kicking things off, we have the Teeter Peak Ambusher. A 1/3 Goblin Warrior for 1 colorless and 1 red. That art is hilarious. For 2 colorless and 1 red, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Okay. Does seem to stack, so if you've got the mana to spend, may as well, right? Next up, we've got Anti-Cognition. It's an instant for 1 colorless and 1 blue. Counter target creature or planeswalker spell unless its controller pays 2 colorless. If an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, instead counter that spell and then scry 2. Okay. Next up, we have the Kabira Outrider, a 3/3 human warrior with 3 colorless and 1 white. When it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature in your party. Okay. We have the Scavenged Blade, which is kind of the red version of Skyclave Pickaxe. It's a red equipment artifact for 1 colorless and 1 red. Its equip cost is 2 colorless and 1 red. Equipped creature gets +2/+0, and when it enters the battlefield, you attach it to target creature you control. Next up, we have the Dauntless Survivor, a 1/1 human warrior for 1 colorless and 1 green. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Okay. Next up, Expedition Sculptor, a 2/2 vampire rogue for 1 colorless and 1 black. Has death touch as long as you control another rogue. Okay. My hair's trying to drag along some of my clicks. That ain't good. Next up, we have the Grotag Bugcatcher, a 1/2 goblin warrior with trample for 1 colorless and 1 red. Again, I love that artwork. It's friggin' hilarious. Whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each creature in your party. Okay, alright. Next up, we have the Prowling Felidar, a 2/3 cat beast with vigilance for 3 colorless and 1 white. It's also got landfall. Put a +1/+1 counter on Prowling Felidar. Okay. Next up, we have the alternate art version of the Dreadworm, a 5/4 worm horror for 4 colorless and 1 black. It has landfall whenever and it gains indestructible until end of turn. Oh boy, that's always fun. Next up, we have Expedition Diviner, a 3/2 Merfolk wizard with flying for 3 colorless and 1 blue. As long as you control another wizard, Diviner has, when this creature dies, draw a card. Okay. Next up, we've got Spring Mantle Cleric, a 2/3 elf cleric for 4 colorless and 1 green. Enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each color of mana spent to cast it. Okay. So technically you can give him up to 5. He can come in as potentially a 7/8. That's not bad. Next up, we've got ourselves a Merfolk Windrobber. Is that in the... No, that was in the command. We saw that last in the commander deck. Okay. Merfolk Windrobber is a 1/1 Merfolk rogue with flying for 1 blue. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player mills a card. You can sacrifice the Windrobber to draw a card, but you can activate the ability only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. Okay. That does appear to be a major thing. Next up, we have the Black Bloom Rogue, a 2/3 human rogue with menace, meaning it can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures for 2 colorless and 1 black. It's also a flip card, which we'll get to in a second. It gets +3/+0 as long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. The other side is the Black Bloom Bog, which enters the battlefield tapped and you can be tapped for 1 black mana. Then we have the Oren Reef Ooze. It's a 2/2 Ooze for 2 colorless and 1 green. When it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature with a +1/+1 counter on it. Okay. So if you've got a means of distributing +1/+1 counters, Oren Reef Ooze makes them even more fun. We get ourselves an island. And an add card. Brings us to our next pack. I think this will put us at the halfway point. Alright, next up we have, starting off we have the Shell Shield. It's an instant for 1 blue with a kicker cost of 1 colorless. Target creature you control gets +0/+3 until end of turn. If kicked, the creature also gains hexproof until end of turn. Okay, alright. Next up we have Practice Tactics, an instant for 1 white. Choose target attacking or blocking creature. Practice Tactics deals damage to that creature equal to twice the number of creatures in your party. Ooh. So that could be up to 8 damage. In a lot of cases, that is the deciding factor. That's it for a creature. 8 damage? Ooh boy. Next up we have the Pyroclastic Hellion. A 4/5 Hellion for 4 colorless and 1 red. When it enters the battlefield, you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. When you do, it deals 2 damage to each Pyroclastic Hellion deals 2 damage to each opponent. Nice. Next up we have Subtle Strike. It's an instant for 1 colorless and 1 black. And you have the option of choosing one or both for options. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Okay. Followed up by Highborn Vampire. 4/3 Vampire Warrior for 3 colorless and 1 black. And he has no actual game text, just flavor text, really. We get the Tajuru Snarecaster. A 1/4 Elf Rogue with Reach for 2 colorless and 1 green. That's not bad. Little steep. Well, I'd say it makes up for it. Next up we have Royal Eruptions. A sorcery for 1 colorless and 1 red with a kicker cost of 5 colorless. Deals 3 damage to any target. If kicked, it deals 5 damage instead. Well, that's worth... Next up we have Strength of Solidarity. It's a sorcery for 1 green. Choose target creature you control. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature in your party. Okay, alright. Next up we have another Living Tempest. And we have Veteran Adventurer, a 5/5 human for 5 colorless and 1 green. And he is simultaneously a Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, and Wizard. Costs 1 less mana to cast for each creature in your party, and has Vigilance. Okay. Then we got another Merfolk Windrobber. Then we got a McKindy Stampede. It's a sorcery for 3 colorless and 2 white. Creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. And yes, it is a flip card. Becomes the McKindy Mesas. A land that enters the battlefield tapped. It can be tapped for 1 white mana. Well, not so much becomes, it can be played as either one, I should say. Our rare, we have the Null Priest of Oblivion. A 2/1 Vampire Cleric with Menace and Lifelink for 1 colorless and 1 black. Also, you got yourself a kicker, another kicker cost. times 3 colorless and 1 black. When entering the battlefield, if kicked, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay. Not bad for additional 4 mana, especially if you grab something big. After all, if something was just, if you had to discard something big from your hand, well, so it goes to your graveyard. We get a foil Relic Robber. The 2/2 Goblin Rogue with haste for 2 colorless and 1 red. I like the way that looks. Nice and shiny. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player creates a 0/1 colorless Goblin Construct artifact creature token with this creature can't block, and at the beginning of your upkeep, this creature deals 1 damage to you. Okay. We get ourselves a Plains. And another blank card. And yes, we are at the halfway point of the bundle. Okay, starting off, we got it. Chilling Trap. It's an instant for 1 blue. Target creature gains -4/-0 until end of turn. If you control a wizard, draw a card. Okay. We got Smite the Monstrous. It's an instant for 3 colorless and 1 white. Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. Kind of the opposite of Vanquish the Weak. You get a Scorched Rider, a 4/3 human warrior for 3 colorless and 1 red with a kicker cost of 1 colorless and 1 red. When the Scorched Rider enters the battlefield, if kicked, gains haste. Okay, alright. Next up we have another Jaraga Visionary, or so first from the... Alright, next up we got ourselves a Jaraga Visionary. A 3/2 elf wizard for 3 colorless and 1 green. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. Next up we got ourselves a Marauding Blight Priest. A 3/2 vampire cleric for 2 colorless and 1 black. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. Okay. Then we have a Cleansing Wildfire. It's a sorcery for 1 colorless and 1 red. Destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library, and you get to draw a card. Okay. Next up we have the Cunning Geyser Mage. A 3/2 human wizard for 2 colorless and 1 blue with a kicker cost of additional 2 colorless and 1 blue mana. Upon entering the battlefield, if kicked, return up to 1 other target creature to its owner's hand. Okay. Alright. We got ourselves a Seagate Banneret. A 1/2. It's a 1/2 core warrior for 1 white. 4 colorless, 1 white. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Okay. Next up we got ourselves a Spare Supplies. It's an artifact for 2 mana. Enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. 2 colorless, tap it and sacrifice it to draw another card. Next up is Scale the Heights. It's a sorcery for 2 colorless and 1 green. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. You gain 2 life. You may play an additional land this turn and draw a card. Not too shabby at all. That's for 3 mana. That is not bad at all. Next up, we got ourselves an Acquisitions Expert. A 1/2 human rogue for 1 colorless and 2 black. When he enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals the number of cards from their hand equals the number of creatures in your party. Choose one of those cards, and that player discards that card. Next up, we have Cinderclasm. An instant for 1 colorless and 1 red with a kicker cost of 1 red. Deals 1 damage to each creature. If kicked, 2 damage to each creature instead. Okay, simple. Followed up by Vastwood Fortification. It's an instant for 1 green. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Or you can bring it into play as a land, the Vastwood Thicket. As the Vastwood Thicket comes into play tapped, and can be tapped for 1 green. Oh boy, we got something nice. Jace, Mirror Mage. Planeswalker for 1 colorless and 2 blue. And it's the alternate borderless art version. It's got kicker cost of 2 colorless. When he enters the battlefield, if kicked, create a token that's a copy of Jace Mirror Mage, except it's not legendary and its starting loyalty is 1. Mirror Mage's starting loyalty, by the way, is 4. Add 1 loyalty, scry 2. 0 loyalty. Draw a card and reveal it. Remove a number of loyalty counters equal to that card's converted mana cost from Jace Mirror Mage. Ooh. We got ourselves on our forest. And we got ourselves a 1/1 cat token. Then we get ourselves in. Moving on to our next booster, we have Negate. It's an instant for 1 colorless and 1 blue. Counter target non-creature spell. Plain and simple. Also a long time blue standard. Get ourselves on our Practice Tactics. We got a Nimana Skydancer. 3/4 human rogue for 3 colorless and 1 black. As long as the opponent has 8 or more creatures or cards in their graveyard, the Skydancer gets +1/+0 and has Menace. Okay. We got ourselves a Xanadu Stomper, a 6/5 beast with trample for 5 colorless and 1 green. When it enters the battlefield, return up to 2 lands you control to their owner's hand. That's a little harsh, but you know. Got ourselves our Sizzling Barrage, their Dauntless Unity, their Highborn Vampire, their Tajuru Snarecaster, their Royal Eruption, their Strings of Solidarity, got an alternate art Fearless Fledgling, 1/1 Griffin with 1 colorless and 1 white. Got landfall as well. Put a +1/+1 counter on for this fledgling. It gains flying until end of turn. Okay. We got ourselves a Vine Gecko, a 2/2 elemental lizard for 1 colorless and 1 green. And it boosts kicker spells. The first kicked spell you cast each turn costs 1 mana less to cast. Whenever you cast a kicked spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Vine Gecko. Okay. Then we have a Ruin Crab, a 0/3 crab for 1 blue. It's got landfall as well as the alt, and this is the alt version, as you can tell. Each opponent mills 3 cards whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. Next up, Ondu Inversion. It's a sorcery for 6 colorless and 2 white. Destroy all non-land permanents. It can also be a land onto Sky Ruins, which enters the battlefield tapped, and can be tapped for 1 white mana. So it's another forest and another blank. Moving on to the next booster. Got another Expedition Healer, another Pyro Classic Hellion, another Shell Shield, another Expedition Skulker, a Gnarlid Colony. It's a 2/2 beast for 1 colorless and 1 green. It's got a kicker cost of 2 colorless and 1 green. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. Okay, alright. Next up, Nahiri's Binding. It's a enchantment for 1 colorless and 2 white. Can be, it's an enchantment that is to be played on either a planeswalker or a creature. The enchanted permanent can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. Ooh, nice. Next up we have the Skyclave Squid. It's a 3/2 squid with Defender for 1 colorless and 1 blue. Also has Landfall. It can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Okay, that's neat. Then you have something on our Tuk Rubble Fort. Another Glacial Grasp. Then we got Soaring Thought Thief. It's a 1/3 human rogue with flash and flying for 1 blue and 1 black. We looked at one already in the Noon Commander deck. As long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, rogues you control get +1/+0. Whenever 1 or more rogues you control attack, each opponent mills 2 cards. Not too shabby. Next up, we've got Thwart the Grave. It's a sorcery for 4 colorless and 2 black. It costs 1 less mana to cast for each creature in your party. So you can knock it down to just 2 black. Return target creature card up to 1 target cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay. Next up we got Kazul's Fury. It's an instant for 2 colorless and 1 red. And as an additional cost, you would sacrifice a creature. Kazul's Fury deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. And it can also come, or it can come as a land, Kazul's Cliffs. Enter the battlefield tapped, and tap for 1 red mana. We'll take a quick look at the picture there. We have the Swarm Shambler. A 0/0 fungus beast for 1 green. Enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it becomes the target of a spell or opponent controls, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. 1 colorless, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on Swarm Shambler. Okay. Here it solves a foil mountain. And that looks pretty damn awesome. And we got ourselves a swamp. Regular swamp. And we also did get an insect token. Take a quick look at that right quick. Just a 1/1 insect. Nothing special. Okay, let's see what else. Get out of these last 2 boosters. These will be the last draft boosters for the only draft boosters for this series. So, yeah. All right, got ourselves an Ardent Electromancer, a 3/2 human wizard for 2 colorless and 1 red. Enters the battlefield. When he enters the battlefield, add 1 red for each creature in your party. Okay. Get ourselves another negate. You have Mesa Lynx, a 2/1 cat for 1 colorless and 1 white. As long as it's not your turn, it gets +0/+2. Okay. Got another Nimana Skydancer. An alternate art Kazandu Nectarpot. Well, we looked at this already, but yeah, there's the alternate artwork on it. Got another Highborn Vampire, another Fissure Snarecaster, another Royal Eruption, another Strength of Solidarity, another Living Tempest. Vastwood Surge. It's a sorcery for 3 colorless and 1 green, with a kicker cost of 4. Search your library for the 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield tapped, shuffle your library. If kicked, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Okay, alright. I like it. Here's a Sure-Footed Infiltrator. A 2/3 Merfolk Rogue for 3 colorless and 1 blue. We saw one of these in one of the commander decks. Tap an untapped rogue you control. Sure-Footed Infiltrator can't be blocked this turn. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Okay. We have the Kibira Takedown. It's an instant. It costs 1 colorless and 1 white. And yes, it does. It can also come into play as a land, which we'll look at in a second. It deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. The land version is the Kabira Plateau, and it enters the battlefield tapped and can be tapped for 1 white. Very simple. And ooh, we got an X. Then we got the alternate art from Valakut Exploration. It's an enchantment for 2 colorless and 1 red. Has landfall. Let's take a quick look. Yeah. Exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Being your end step, if there are cards called exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them in their owner's graveyard. Then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. Neat. We get ourselves another island. It's actually kind of one of the standards for the islands from Zendikar. You almost always see that, I think, or something similar to that. And another blank card. So, last booster. Let's see what we get. Alright, we got ourselves a Tazim Raptor, a 2/2 bird with flying for 2 colorless and 1 white. When it enters the battlefield, you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. Okay. You don't have to, you may. Next up, we've got ourselves a Sneaking Guide. It's a 1/1 Goblin Rogue for 1 red. 2 colorless, tap. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Okay. We get a Zulaport Duelist, a 1/1 human rogue with flash for 1 blue. When he enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature gets -2/-0 till end of turn. Its controller then mills 2 cards. Ooh. Another Nimana Skydancer, another Kazandu Stomper. There's Seagate Banneret. There's Spare Supplies. And there's Scale the Heights. We get Shepherd of Heroes, a 3/4 Angel Cleric with flying for 4 colorless and 1 white. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life for each creature in your party. Okay. Another Nimana Skydancer. Got Shaun of the Swarm, a 3/3 Vampire Cleric with flying for 3 colorless and 2 black. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Shaun of the Swarm. Ooh, neat. Then we get ourselves an alternate art Skyclave Geopede. It's a 3/1 insect with trample for 2 colorless and 1 red. It's also got landfall. Skyclave Geopede gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Okay. Then we have the Colony Ambush. It's an instant for 2 colorless and 1 green. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. It can also come into play, however, it can also be played as a land, Colony Territory. It enters the battlefield tapped and can be tapped for 1 green mana. Our rare is the Crawling Barrens. It can be tapped for 1 colorless mana. For 4 mana, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Crawling Barrens. Then you may have it become a 0/0 elemental creature until end of turn. It's still a land. Interesting. Get ourselves on our plains. And we got ourselves a Drake, a 2/2 blue Drake token with flying. And that's it for the bundle. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. We'll be back as soon as possible to crack open the remaining set booster box. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying live long and rock hard.